Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter, and joining me once again is Allison.
So say we all.
This is going to be our review of Battlestar Galactica Season 1, Episode 6. It is called Litmus, so spoilers for the episode, as always. This one, Darryl somehow returned. Well, it's not somehow. We know how he returned. There's many copies. It tells
somehow.
us every episode starts with that there are many copies. It's not a mystery. I just wanted to make fun of Star Wars Episode 9, as I'm wanting to do. Yeah, he's back. He brings a bomb, and disaster happens. But the episode focuses on kind of the trial, the investigation of how he was able to get on the ship and whether or not anyone might be colluding with Cylons. And this brings a lot of the stuff to a head with Boomer and Tyrol and all that like hidden relationship stuff going on. And that's the main focus. There's more Caprica stuff as well with Hilo and whatnot, but that is the main focus of the episode. So what did you think of this one?
I thought this was a pretty good episode, maybe breaking the even episode curse that we've sort of noted. I think that the relationship aspect between Boomer and Tyrol is maybe in some ways the weakest part, even though it's actually the central element of the episode in many ways. It's like, it almost seems like, why are they together in the first place? Or I guess you could imagine they didn't expect it to cause so many potential problems, and that's what had been alluded to previously. But I think the way the investigation plays out and the way the different characters react and interact because of it, is some very interesting aspects of human psychology and how people respond, I guess, in times of crisis.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty mixed on this episode, which is to say that
Okay.
I think there's things in it that I really like, which is kind of the ongoing world building, the idea of having to reveal to the public that Cylons can look like humans. That's a big deal. It's a big advancement in the overall plot, and I like the weight that brings with it. And like seeing the press conference, for example, that Rosalind puts on, I really like that stuff. But I think some of the other stuff in the episode, and I agree with the relationship feeling kind of oddly weak, I think the relationship's kind of weird for me, and I think I like what they're trying to do with the investigation tribunal, but at the same time, it felt a little, I don't know, like, I felt like it was going for this thing where you could see Adama's point of view, and you could see the investigator's point of view. Sergeant Hadrian's her name. She makes some good points, right? The best point she probably makes in the entire episode when she's talking to Adama is she says, well, if the security team, which she's a part of on Galactica, knew they could look like humans, wouldn't security be different as a result, and maybe would have stopped this incident with the bomb from happening? And I'm like, that is a very good point. Maybe the security team should have been the people who were in the know that perhaps this was a possibility. But having said that, I think that it kind of muddies these waters by trying to like paint her into this corner of, you know, as they put it in the episode, kind of just turning into a witch hunt. And by the time Adama stands up and says, I'm shutting this down because this is just a witch hunt now, I found myself really unsatisfied with not really feeling like they'd, like, okay, she feels like she's getting a little aggressive. Like, I'll admit that. I'm definitely feeling that. But at the same time, I don't know if we've got to the point where she's definitely crossed the line and this has to be shut down. But at the same time, I also don't necessarily disagree with Adama either. So instead of, I think what they wanted me to feel was that, oh, I can see both sides of the argument, and it's kind of a sticky shades of grey situation where someone has to make a call, and that's how it is. I think I got kind of the inverse of that, where I'm like, I can kind of get both sides, but I don't really feel like we actually justified it enough for the conclusion. You know, when Adama stands up and says, I'm shutting this down, part of me felt like, you might just be abusing your power right now, Adama. I'm not so sure. Like, I feel a bit murky about this. And I don't think it's because the writers want us to think that way about Adama. I think it's just because the build to that moment doesn't necessarily add up to it quite enough for me. So yeah, very very mixed bag. I guess I'm saying the even episode curse, if you want to call it that, is still a little in play. You don't think it's broken? Yeah, I think we're still kind of dancing with it a little bit.
Okay, I think that's fair. I was thinking as you were saying some of those things too, that not here on BSG, but on other, say, Star Trek universe kind of shows, we've seen
Sure.
a lot of these court type episodes. A couple of the episodes of TNG that are all time classics are this kind of format. And the prosecutor, investigator, whoever is always kind of the bad guy in those episodes.
Hmm.
Right. So I think maybe we're a little set up to feel like Hadrian is going to be the antagonist. And of course, we love Adama. We respect Adama. We know he's our guy. We know he's going to do the right thing. So we wind up maybe just naturally kind of going to his side. And I think your point about maybe he is overstepping his bounds. And then the one member of the tribunal even says, hey, you can't shut us down. We're independent. And he just basically orders the Marine to take them out or take
Yeah.
Hadrian back to her quarters.
That sounds like he says it told him to kill them. It wasn't that extreme.
Oh no! I'm sorry, I didn't. I did that poor choice of words. She tries to. Maybe I'm jumping ahead too much. It becomes a little bit of a power struggle, let's put it that way. And
Yeah.
Adama even says to the Marine, make your choice, son, right? And he chooses to follow Adama's orders.
Yeah, he gets conflicting sets of orders. One from her, which is to sort of turn Adama around and sit him back down in the seat, and the opposite from Adama, which is no, take her into, maybe custody's a strong word, but escort her back to her quarters and just make sure she stays there. So, and then he has this moment of like, whose orders do I follow? And he ultimately picks Adama, which I think is the right choice in the end, but it's kind of weird. I think maybe there was just like a missing step that made it more clear that Hadrian had gone too far, like, because it did feel like she was like going after Adama now, which felt kind of weird since they already had like kind of the story of like who did something. And I mean, we know it's not exactly true what they've kind of learned and, you know, decided on, but they've got their story. But she's going after Adama now, like she wants someone higher up the food chain. And I think there could have been a better argument, even if it's just as simple as Adama explaining why he's shutting it down a bit more than just this is a witch hunt and we're not going to have that. Might have been just a little bit more to make me really feel like why I'm on his side. Because I think I was more on his side, don't get me wrong, but it still felt like you've not quite really sold it to me. It is the absolute right thing beyond just he's the one I like more because he's Adama, and this woman was a red shirt for the last couple of episodes, and now we're probably never going to see her again. So, like,
Totally fair. No, and that's always kind of also what happens in these trial style episodes, right? Is that whoever's coming in with a claim or whatever is a one shot appearance.
Yeah.
So we don't have to care about them. We don't have an established history with them. It would be interesting, actually, to see this kind of episode where the characters we're familiar with were more the antagonists.
Oh, for sure. I think, though, to the previous point about the guest star being kind of, you know, a one episode type deal, and this character has been around, but in a very limited, just kind of their capacity. You know, I think one of those episodes you brought up of TNG, right? The first one most people probably think of as Measure of a Man, which is the Data on Trial episode. But there's the one, I think it's in season 4, where there's basically, and this is where it's more comparable because you've got this guest character who's kind of the one trying to prosecute someone, and the whole plot's about how it's like that this person's grandfather was a Romulan and fought in a Romulan war or whatever, and there's a lot of arguments for and against, but one of the things that happens throughout those arguments is that obviously it's talking a lot about prejudice, but you get a lot of the bias and a lot of the reasons why this person who is prosecuting, why they're doing it. Not necessarily that you agree with them or think she's right, but you understand like that she is biased or perhaps a little bit racist or whatever. I don't think there's anything in this episode to give us a sense of who Hadrian is as a character. Like, there's never a sense of like, oh, she's going after like Adama or these other characters for any other reason than just she's there to represent that there's going to be someone coming to question them. You know, she's never a character in that way, I would say.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And I think that when she first gets the assignment, she even says it has to be independent. I have to be able to ask whoever I need to ask, whatever I need to ask. And the questions about concealing the Cylon human identity thing are reasonable to ask, I think, but I also think Adama's reasons for keeping that very confidential, very limited information were also very valid. And the idea that, it would become a true witch hunt across the fleet with people just accusing each other, the way, ironically, Baltar did to the first Doral when they left them behind, left him behind at the end of the miniseries.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think his reasons, and that's maybe the point it's getting at the end, is that she starts going after Adama for decisions he made as being the one in command. And ultimately, like, it's almost like she's trying to make him answer for choices that he made in his role. But, he made the choices he made, he had reasons to make them, and it's not like he intentionally did anything to put the fleet at risk. And maybe he should have argued his point better just to sort of get across why this was kind of weird that she was going after him now specifically, because it did feel like a weird sort of pivot at that point in the episode to go down this path. And sure, I always like Adama getting up out the chair and, like, asserting his beliefs, right, because he's very good at it. But just a bit murky as far as like it almost feels like if you had like an extra 10 minutes almost just to flesh out some of the arguments and like why she's going after Adama specifically and why Adama feels justified in shutting it down, I think it might have gotten to like a better place. As it is, it feels like it's conveniently wrapping up because the episode's ending soon. It's more of a convenience thing than it is a like driven by like we're at that point. So but that's it. I mean, arguably the more interesting part of all this, though, is so the setup with Tyrell and Boomer is that at the start of the episode, they were having a little meeting, right? And the deck crew, Callie and the others knew about it, and they were covering for him. But he's with her, they're canoodling in some hangar bay or whatever it is, some back room. And this is when the bomb incident happens, right? And it's to do a lot of building up to it. The camera follows behind Doral, and you can tell it's him the entire time, but they kind of conceal it anyways for like anticipation's sake until Ty sees him, because he's obviously would recognize who it is, and then Adama sees him, and that all goes down. But the result of this is that Tyrell and Boomer have to lie about where they were, so that instantly suspicious. And the deck crew then also start lying about where they saw Tyrell, and it's almost like a running gag almost that when Hadrian goes around and asks them all if Tyrell was there or somewhere else, they all give completely different stories about where he was at that time.
And you know what? Fair enough. That looks suspicious, right?
Oh yeah.
Why is every person telling me something different, including then the chief, about where he was at the time of the bombing?
Yeah, and I think, that's a fair setup, right? And obviously, once they start going into it, I did think it was a little bit weird how Hadrian, like, it's one thing to, like, go looking for how this Cylon was able to get to, like, a part of the ship they shouldn't have. But I feel like it was weird how when they do get Tyrell down and like question him, they immediately say, "Were you meeting with a Cylon agent?" And I'm like, "We're jumping to someone is actually helping the Cylons." I feel like that's a bit of a leap, especially since the story that ends up sort of coming out, again, we know it's not exactly true, is that someone just left it open by accident, right? The hatch. That's all it was. Someone left the hatch open.
Right. But didn't you also sort of chuckle to yourself a little bit when they were demanding to know if he was meeting with a Cylon?
And
because
he was
meeting with a Cylon.
But he didn't know that.
No, not officially.
Yeah, so I'm going to say something without even giving a hint of what scene I'm talking about, because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, because this is later show stuff. I will say there's something else in this episode that when someone said something, I smirked because a long time down the road, that line's going to play differently.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know to what you are referring.
Yeah. So I'm being as vague as I possibly can. But it was just like a line that's going to mean something different in like 2.5 seasons time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure exactly the same thing was on my mind during this episode.
So, and it does some things to set up the deck crew's commitment to Tyrell. They all cover for him, and when he catches them making some, like, I don't know, space booze or whatever they're doing.
They have a still set up. Yeah. And at first he acts all mad about it, and then he's like, "You're gonna kill yourself drinking this shit. Like, get me some more copper tubing and a few other pieces of equipment, and we'll do this right."
Yeah, so it's showing that he's friendly with them, that he's kind of like a big brother to them, lets them away them with stuff. So it kind of says why they might be willing to stick up for him. but it's also meant to sort of set up the sad part, which is that ultimately one of these guys is going to take the fall and say he left this door open when it was actually Boomer, and he's going to get stripped of his rank and thrown in in the brig and all the rest of it. And when Tyrell hears this, and he's very upset by it, he goes to Adama. And this is a big scene towards the end of the episode where he's like, "Hey, sir, can I talk to you? I want to talk about this guy's covering for me. I think he's doing it out of some sense of loyalty, but he's not guilty of this, blah, blah, blah." And it's a really interesting scene because Adama says, "Yeah, you should be in the brig. I agree with that. You are at fault here. But let's be clear about something here. This kid's not innocent because he lied when he was questioned the first time or the second time when he was covering for you. Even if he was telling the truth the second time, maybe he was telling the truth neither time, but either way, he definitely lied at least once. So he does deserve to be punished. And frankly, your punishment's different. Your punishment is that you have to walk out onto that deck every day knowing that one of your people has been stripped of their rank and is sitting in a cell because you had to get laid. That's on you, and you have to live with that. And frankly, I need you to fix my planes, so you're not going to a jail cell. You're staying out there and fixing my planes."
Yeah, you're our senior enlisted guy. He's the chief mechanic. They need him more than they needed this junior deckhand. His name was Sosinus. I'm not sure if we've ever seen him before, maybe also in the background.
I think, I think he was there. I feel like his face looked familiar from like maybe the miniseries or something, but I think he has been around. Yeah. It's, I think the moment hits well enough with this Adama Tyrell scene, because I think it really gives them a bit of meat to their relationship where it's not all going to be love and rainbows. Because, remember, Tyrell loves Adama. His whole thing in the miniseries is like, "Hey, sir, let me give you this plaque and photo. Let me give you this fighter Viper that I've restored from your past." Like, he worships Adama. So having Adama say this to him and react this way to him, I think has to cut deep. And then that leads to, of course, the final sequence with Tyrell and Boomer, where he breaks things off with her because their relationship they're sneaking around is not worth what's happened to this innocent person. And I don't like this scene very much. Right? This is actually one of my scenes that I don't like in this episode, because I think they've turned Boomer into like, I'm secretly a villain, like, so quick. I don't know, it felt weird to me where she gets kind of like menacing with the way she responds to him and is like, "Oh, we're just going to throw us away like that." And he's like, "Oh, I'm never," because he asks her at the end of the scene, like, "Did you leave that hatch open?" And she's like, "I'm not going to answer you." And she just walks out. And it just kind of felt like, when they set up Boomer's whole thing as her being a Cylon but not knowing it, it felt like, oh, like, she's this good person, this good character, but she doesn't know that she's actually a Cylon. And I feel like ever since the water episode 2 of the season, where she was having these blackouts and she was kind of suspicious that she'd done a lot of bad things but doesn't remember it, it feels like ever since then it's been kind of in this weird murky place where she just kind of knows she's up to something but doesn't actually like acknowledge it. So her like more, oh, like, I'm just acting more cold and intimidated. Like, I basically what I'm saying is I feel like her relationship with Tyrell, the advantage of it before this episode is that it's the thing in her character's story that humanized her, right? It made her feel like a person. It made her feel like she cared about someone, that she had something that she was passionate about, another person. And this cold turn at the end kind of feels like, oh, now she feels like she's just a sleeper agent now. And I think that's an interesting development, especially since it's in the same episode where it feels like the other Sharon has a couple of little interesting character moments which feel very well developed. So that's just an interesting kind of comparison between the two. But how did you feel about this final scene with Boomer?
I do agree. And I would say I always felt like their relationship was a little weird, like from the beginning when they were sneaking around and stuff, because it was always this sort of forbidden fruit a little bit. But then there is reference to the fact that Ty told them they needed to break it off. It was okay back when everything was closing down and we weren't actually a military operation, but now we are, and we can't have this going on.
Yeah, which actually did just quickly, as much as this isn't like a big part of the episode, but I did, probably the biggest laugh I got perhaps in this episode was when the tribunal says to Adama, "You knew about this relationship, why did you let it continue?" And the way he just dryly says, "I'm a soft touch," actually got me a good chuckle out of me.
Yeah, that was a very good moment. And perhaps I'm having some I feel like I have a little bit more empathy for Sharon than perhaps you're feeling now that for the boomer Sharon, although
Mm.
perhaps it is a little bit of bleed through from the Sharon Caprica Sharon's story as well. Um, but I always found her a likable character, and I will certainly say I think it's Grace Park as the actress is also a very likable actress. So
Yeah, I found her very likable in the miniseries for sure. I think in the actual show proper, Boomer's been kind of and I think part of the weirdness here actually, and this is probably a big bit that contributes to it, is that I feel like the second Sharon, the one in Caprica, I remember first watching this feeling a bit weird about her at first because I'm like, oh no, but I've already attached to Boomer and I'm kind of like into her, like finding out what she is and all that. But the funny thing is that I think watching it again, and especially now after this episode where Sharon on Caprica is starting to feel a bit more developed in some different subtle ways, and then Boomer feels a bit more just sort of like, oh, the switch is flipped to just being cold and maybe villainous, is I actually think the Sharon on Caprica is arguably a more engaging character because she knows who she is, so any development she has actually feel like real developments or like insights into how she's actually feeling. Whereas with Boomer, it kind of feels like because she's not exactly sure what she is, it's just kind of murkying up her turn to villainy a little bit because it's not even like she has a good reason for it other than just like there's some inner programming that's kind of pushing her that way, I guess. Or although you could argue that maybe Tyrell breaking things off with her is kind of like, you know, is breaking that last tether to humanity that maybe is going to like speed up any turn that she's making. So I can kind of see the writer's logic. You know, I can imagine them in the writer's room justifying why they're making some of these choices. I just don't know if it actually all kind of lands in the episode in the finished product.
remember that Tyrell knew all about the memory lapses that Sharon was
Yes.
having back in the water episode. So, him asking her if she was the one who left the hatch open, you know, it's possible that could have happened without her remembering it.
It's true.
But her response of I'm not even going to tell you that is definitely hurt feelings in that moment. I'm not going to defend myself to you because I don't owe you anything anymore. You
Yeah,
just broke my heart.
it justifies why he's asking that question because he knows about those previous incidents. And you can explain, it's very ambiguous as to why, you know, obviously you get that she's hurt in the moment, that's absolutely true. But I think it's very ambiguous as to, does she know she left it open? Or is this something that happened where she doesn't remember it? Or does she remember it and she's accepting it and doesn't care because she's hurt? And she's like, you know, I'm not going to tell you. And she's, you know, yeah, so she's like, you know, I'm never giving you an answer to that question. And he's like, okay, boomer. And he didn't actually say that. I just wanted to say, okay, boomer.
I know you did. I know you appreciate that a lot.
Boomer wasn't a term that was being used like that when this show first aired, so it's just really funny now.
I know. We should also just say, though, that the big deal about the hatch being left open is that it's believed that's how the Doral got into a weapons locker and got the bomb and
Yes.
killed a Marine there, which wasn't known. I assumed initially that he just came on board with the bomb, but presumably they have good enough security that that wouldn't have happened.
I would like to think so.
I would like to think so. But he could still have snuck it on somehow. But no, he actually got the explosives on board the Galactica.
Which is smart from like connecting it back to Boomer's previous incidents, because that was all about getting into the weapons locker and stealing stuff. So it kind of like ties it thematically together with that. Yeah.
Still also explosives.
Yes, yes. So makes sense. So I guess it is interesting when the tribunals say to Adama, do you believe there might be Cylon like operatives on this ship right now? He just says yes. And that's an interesting response, actually.
Well, and I think that's not paranoia, that's realism.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. But it has some weight to it.
Rosalind shows during her press conference when she announces them, she shows the picture of Doral and Leoben, who they knew to be Cylon agents.
Actually, I want to mention just a detail here that I really liked. It shows they're really paying attention to their continuity. Is that they have a nice headshot for Doral because he was the press guy, like on the museum version of Battlestar Galactica. But for Leoben, they've only got a photo of his dead body because that's all they have. They have a corpse. So I like the idea that they had a good photo of one of them, but the other one is just a photo of his dead body. I just like that detail.
Sure, yeah. But they haven't actually identified anyone else as being a Cylon. And of course, Baltar knows about 6.
Yeah, speaking of Baltar, let's talk about. So he's got a couple of scenes this episode. Not a big focus, but he's got a couple. One is he
Well,
goes
really
to.
just one.
Well, I
Well,
want
it
to
all
mention.
kind of runs together.
Yeah, well, I want to mention the one with Starbuck first, just because it's a nice scene. I really like how Six appears in that scene because she's not there initially, and she sort of appears behind the curtain in the hospital area, in the med bay. Because again, I like that sense of continuity. We actually see Starbuck very briefly early on in the episode. When all the injured people from the explosion are in medbay, and she's just sort of sitting there like, "What the hell's going on?" I like that. That was a nice little touch. But
that is also good continuity because she's still recovering from
yes.
what happened previously. So you're right. It did feel a little weird to me that Baltar was just coming to give her a cigar and say, "Get well soon." Like, it's a little cheesy, don't you think?
I mean, they at least established they'd kind of played poker a couple times together, so maybe it's definitely trying to tease that there's a flirtation there. So, I guess the way I would say it is it's less maybe like the way he presents it is cheesy, but the cynical part of me is like, no, he just wants to have sex with her. So this is a means to his end.
Okay, imaginary sex just isn't quite enough.
No, although apparently when she pins him against the wall, he actually gets like pinned up against the wall. So the guards walking past were having a field day watching him play out his little weird kinky fantasy on the walkways. Which interestingly, this time Six in his head very explicitly implies that she is just in his head, and that the Cylons don't even know about the Six in his head. Which now doesn't necessarily mean it's 100% true. Of course, she could be lying, but I thought that was interesting, just given like the previous like things she said and our discussion and theorizing about, is this just in his head? Is it something that she's left behind in his head? So on and so on.
Is it just a mental break or a delusion, or is there actually maybe a mechanical sort of reason for it?
Yeah, I think if it is just in his head, it's very, very interesting then that he was able to just point out a Cylon that turned out to be a Cylon without him actually knowing about it. That's the fascinating part, and then that's before we even get to like her like holding him up against the wall, and she literally quotes the Hulk. She says, "You wouldn't like me when I'm angry," which stuck out to me a little bit.
Call that out.
Yeah, well, I'm like, I don't know. He's fantasizing about this, so I think he may like you when you're angry. Frankly, I think he might be into it. Is my guess.
That's true, and if it is all in Baltar's head, then we know he's been reading Marvel comics in the future, right?
Yeah, I mean, does Marvel exist in Caprica and the other colonies? I don't know.
well, perhaps, yeah. That's a fair.
Who's to say? That said, though, at one point, Ty said this episode, the cat's out of the bag, and I'm like, oh, it's interesting, all the little human expressions that are still kind of in there, like, you're kind of noticing little references to things, maybe. But I have to assume that's something they're very careful about when they were writing this show, is like, we can't just reference Wizard of Oz at any point, because they wouldn't know that.
We skipped over what was actually the important potential reveal between Baltar and Starbuck, which is, she says, "Do you think that maybe that Cylon bomber on Deck C was going to your lab or your workshop or whatever?" And he really clearly, I think, never thought about that before. She's saying maybe that's why it was there.
Yeah,
that's why Doral was coming in the first place.
That's basically why he has a heated conversation with Inner Six, right? Is he's like, wait, are you trying to kill me? Yeah. So that's where that conversation goes. I also really like, when they do reveal it to the public, I did like this idea of like, there could be 10 Dorals running around on different ships. We really should show his photo so that if anyone sees him or Leoben, they can like say, hey, he's here, and we can deal with that, because that is the one advantage to this, even though all the witch hunt stuff is obviously a concern. And we do see a little hint of that. The other guy in the deck basically says, oh, anyone could be a Cylon now, it's every man for himself, watch your backs. And I'm like, all right, buddy. You're just assuming everyone is a Cylon all of a sudden, but all right.
And that was the exact danger they were afraid would start to happen if they revealed that Cylons can look like humans.
Of course, yeah. So, and the press are all having a field day. We get all the hands going up for questions to cut the scene on. It's such a trope, but I do like the cut away from the press conference as they all start putting their hands up and making noise. It's a good bit. All right, Caprica. Who I thought about Caprica, and Basically, after the last episode, obviously Halo's under the impression that Sharon's been taken by Cylons, but obviously she's actually up on the roof with Six and Doral, talking about
she's really just hanging out with the Cylons. She hasn't been kidnapped or anything.
And they're basically saying, okay, right, he's going to wait until nightfall to move. If he goes north, it means that he... Well, I actually can't remember which way was what direction, but it doesn't really matter. If he goes
north was looking for Sharon, south was just heading away.
Yeah, so he's going to make a choice to either come after Sharon or do the more logical thing, because it's maybe not worth going after her. He'll just go south and get away to to maybe like a location that's going to be advantageous. And it's like, okay, well, we'll just have to see like how much like you've made him care about you, right? And it like when we come back to it, we cut away after that little bit, and we come back to it, and he's making this choice. It looks like he's going north, and they're all like, "Oh, looks like he doesn't love you."
It looks like he was going south, which was the away direction. North was to her. So he steps just a few steps in the other direction and then turns around.
Yes. Yeah, the point is it looked like he was going the wrong way, but then he went the right way. Like the north and south, I keep mixing up the north and south. It doesn't really matter. The point is that for that moment, though, when it looks like he's not going to save her, Sharon looks legitimately a little disappointed by that. And I think that's when I was talking about like just some subtle hints that, we're actually getting this idea that she does care, right? That she's got some feeling there, even though she's talking to the other Cylons and they're being all sort of mysterious and ominous about what their plans are. And they're like, okay, he's coming after you. He's like, yeah, he's a good man. He'll always do the right thing. All right, are you ready to get the shit kicked out of you so you look like you've been beat up by Cylons? And technically it's not a lie. Six kicking the crap out of her is her being beat up by a Cylon. So I guess technically it's all above board.
This was also just a tiny bit of a funny moment for me here too, where I think Doral hits her first, and Sharon says, "Is that enough?" And Six kind of looks at her very critically and says, "No, Sharon would fight harder than that," and then really starts laying into her.
Yeah, so that when Halo comes and finds her, and if I'm going to critique anything, it's like they kind of just gloss over how easily he finds her, and like I get it. You don't want to spend a lot of plot in this, so you just go with it. But when he finds her, he takes out a Cylon robot, and part of me thought, oh, it's kind of easy to just shoot one of these robots in the head. You think they'd be more durable? But then I also thought about it and said that, well, it does kind of make sense though if they were at war with Cylons for like a long time, like 40 years ago, that they would specifically have designed all their weapons to be able to like penetrate metal. That would actually make sense when you think about it. So anyway,
that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, but anyway, he takes off her hood and she's been beat to shit. She's got blood, she's all beat up, and he walks off with her, and it's like, okay, time for phase 6 or whatever phase we're on of this Halo plan that's happening. Mm-hmm. So
this observation of human emotion and relationship development experiment that they're doing. Yeah, and you just see Six and Doral are on a higher level of the building watching over them.
Yeah, very curious. But like I said, this is probably the most I've enjoyed this Caprica stuff so far, just because the little, like, having Sharon be with the other Cylons and talk about what's happening, and then seeing her little subtle reaction to, like, Halo maybe not choosing to come after her, was probably the most engaging the entire plot's been so far, I think. Because up until this, like, we know he's being played, he doesn't know he's being played, so it's all just kind of been going through some motions up until now. This felt like real advancement on some level to me, because like, oh no, this is a real feeling she's having that we're kind of witnessing a little bit. Anything else in the episode you would like to bring up?
I'm just checking my notes.
Maybe Adama saying to Ty, I owe you one, and then Ty getting all like saluting, like very like he gets really firm and salutes like, yes, thank you, Commander. He's like, yes, thank you, Colonel, and he walks off. And the flute comes in, the military flute comes in, just so you can like feel the camaraderie of the moment.
Well, Ty saw Doral first and called for security, and then Adama's like walking down the hall and passes him too, and also goes, hold up a minute, right? So presumably Doral was... we don't really know this for sure, but the assumption sort of, or the implication in the episode was that maybe he was going for Baltar's lab, and he has to set off the bomb early because he gets caught. He gets found out. So yeah, Ty kind of pulls Adama out of the way. It was a very heroic moment for Saul Ty, who is not always the most heroic figure.
Yeah, Adama basically tries to rush him to maybe stop the bomb going off, but it's probably a stupid decision because he won't get there in time, and Ty realizes that and like sort of dives at him to keep him like out of harm's way. The death count was 3 dead and like 13 injured, I think they said, for the explosion. But yeah, no, I mean it was an exciting intro to the episode. I can't say it wasn't. Of course, I just wish the actual kind of the paranoia and politics of the tribunal were just a little bit better handled.
I think ultimately what it was is it felt a little rushed. It didn't quite have enough time, like maybe, like you said, another 5-10 minutes to develop it a little more. I think it would have worked. But getting to bringing Adama in and that questioning session with him became almost like, wait a second, we're getting to this quickly. That was my feeling anyway.
Yeah, no. Yeah, so just a bit murky on that front, and I like the scene with Adama and Tyrell, but the scene with Tyrell and Boomer less so. I was a bit more mixed on that one. Like I said, it's interesting though because I do think there's a lot of important like overall plot advancements in this episode. You know, the public finding out about the Cylons looking human, everyone's reaction to that I quite like. I like, you know, I'm probably starting to like, I'd say, the Sharon and Hilo stuff on Caprica a bit more. So there's a lot of things in this that I think are very important, like stepping stones for what the show is doing, but I just wish some of the core parts of it were a bit on the stronger side. So, but yeah, that is the episode of Battlestar Galactica. So we'll be back next time with episode 7, which... I don't remember this one specifically, but yeah, we'll find out. Honestly, I think at this point, except from like very obvious big standout episodes, I'm probably not going to specifically remember them until we watch them. But yeah, so yeah, let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff helps out a bunch if you do. And if you, of course, you can support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, which supports this channel, but also the movie channel, MailFuzz Movies, where all the movie podcasts live. But that is us, so thank you once again for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?